Welcome back to another video from Twisted Dice. I'm Darren, and today I'm going to be taking you through how I use Crackle Medium. So Crackle Medium, it's an interesting medium, and I have used this in the past, and I've used it doing some bases. I've done some really cool lava bases underneath. It's been a while since I had it, and I was trying to find the old models out so I could show you exactly what type of things I was talking about. And unfortunately, it's back in those days where I never really shared my work. It was kind of like one of those things. It's kind of like a hobby closet where I'd hide away and do all my weird and wonderful stuff and never share it to the world because I was afraid of like what people would think and say. Anyway, so some cool stuff that unfortunately I can't show you. However, this stuff, when I was doing the Horus Heresy, when I was in the Horus Heresy scene, I was started to do my lunar walls. I wanted my guys to be battle damaged. I want them to be like been in combat, where they've taken hits from ammunition, from like shells. I wanted to have like the indent, but I also wanted to have like the armor cracked all the way down, but I wanted it very, very random. And that's why I stumbled upon this. Now, the interesting thing, when I got all of this, there was no real videos to show you how to use this stuff. And if you go onto their website, they don't really talk to you how to use it other than you apply it between two paints. Okay, that's not great. So I thought I'd make a little video and I'll show you, because it's something that's been asked, and I thought I'd show you exactly how I use it. Have a look at the video, tell me what you think. Drop some comments down below whether you find this useful, helpful. I'm going to take you through two techniques today. The first one is going to be bases, how to do some really cool lava bases, or whether you wanted to do that real. So the two bases I've done, one's lava and one is where you got like the summoning, like demon essence of the warp, coming up underneath your sorcerer. That's the idea anyway. The second idea I put onto this video is I'm going to show you how I did the crackle effect on the actual shoulder pad itself. Now, I'm not doing it on a shoulder pad. I've actually done it on the Fortress of Redemption. So stick to the ends of the video, check that out, because you might find that interesting. It's a really, really cool little trick. But there is also a mistake that I made in there. So, I do talk about it a little bit later on in this video, but it's worth to watch that because that will help you learn not to make the same mistake I did. Anyway, hopefully, I really hope that you enjoy this content. I really would appreciate if you drop any comments down below. Let us know what you think of it and if it's been helpful. And again, if you've used this before, if you see something that I'm not doing it right or something that I've missed, please again drop some comments down. But I think what I've done so far has been some really, really cool things there. Anyway, I'm talking too much. Look, if you're new to the channel, thank you very much for joining us. Really do appreciate it. If you could do me a massive great favor though by hitting the subscribe on the channel, don't forget to smash the bell, of course, because that's going to keep you updated on all the cool content. And of course, that helps us grow as a channel. We'd really, really appreciate it, me and Ace. Anyway, let's get on with the video. So Crackle Medium, what is it and what can you do with it? It's a product that doesn't have a lot of information on it from its main website itself. It doesn't give you a lot of direction. It's pretty much a tool that, if it's used in the correct way, can do some awesome stuff. So here's two examples that I've done already. So this one I've done over a white base, done the yellows. Now with this one, I just put the Crackle Medium straight over the top, and then using an airbrush, I sprayed Rhinox hide and dry bark straight over the top, and as you can see the textures, the paint didn't quite sit upon the actual the medium itself, and it's kind of split apart. And as you can see, you kind of got where you got the browns, you got the cracks in there, which was quite cool. In this base, now with this base, I let the medium dry, so exactly the same as the previous one. Spray painted the base white, done the yellows and the oranges, and then sprayed the medium on top, let it dry, and then sprayed the dry bark over the top once the medium has dried. And as you can see, the cracks have spread out quite nicely upon the model itself, which is absolutely freaking awesome. And you can get some really, really cool effects. So it then started making me thinking, right, okay, so what other things can I do with this? Now, I do apologise if my hands and the way I talk is out of sync. Unfortunately, when recording this, the sound wasn't captured on the actual camcorder itself, so do apologise. Now, so what I've done on this point here, I'm going to show you a couple of different examples on what you can do with this product itself. So I've got 4 bases, and I'm going to use a bit of train as well, so I can show you some other effects using the Crackle Medium. So I've got 4 bases, 2 of them are sprayed red using the Halford's Red Primer. It's a very nice bright red vibrant colour, which is absolutely awesome. And I've got 2 white bases, which I'm going to be putting some green, some vibrant greens, some vibrant blues, and some really popping yellows on there, just so I can show you some other effects. And as you can see, I've got a bit of terrain that's from the Fortress of Redemption from the Dark Angels. So I'm going to show you some really cool, hopefully some really cool effects off the back of this, and hopefully you'll take something from it. Now, if you used this product before, you've had some experience with it, please drop some comments down below. Really do appreciate it. If you like what we're pushing out with Twisted Dice, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. More importantly, smash that bell. Anything cool that's coming out from ourselves, whether it be some really super awesome lore or some tyranny tactics, or even if it's some battle reports, we've got you covered. Anyway, let's get back on with this. So with these 2 bases, I'm going to do one using the Agrilan Earth from Citadel. Now this is one of their textured paints. It's got a really awesome effect. The other base, I'm just going to be using the Crackle paint itself from the Vallejo. The reason why I'm doing the 2 is you might find it might not be easy to get out of the Crackle paint from Vallejo, as the Games Workshop is more widely available. Now with this, all I'm doing is just putting it straight onto the model itself, in this case the base, just going straight in, using the brush just to manipulate it around the actual base itself. What I found was, don't go too thin with this, but don't go too thick neither. Once the paint starts to dry, you'll find it will even itself out. If you're doing it on a surface that's got like a bit of a bevel to it, or a sphere, you're going to find that Crackle paint is going to slide down. So just be mindful when you're putting it on, it will run down and you will get that pull effect. So you've got to try to be careful on that as well. What I would recommend, if you have got an old base, just experiment first of all before you put it on, just so you can actually get a feel for the actual properties of the product. Because as I say, you can get some really cool effects with this. So just so you can compare the Crackle paint to the Games Workshop texture paint, I'm going to do exactly on the same colour on the same base, just so we can compare at the end. And all I'm going to do is just going to put this neat from the pot straight onto the actual base. Also nice to note that I'm going to put in some areas a little bit thicker, just so I can get those bigger cracks or the bigger flaky bits on there, because I love it when it flakes. So all we're going to do now, we're going to let these dry naturally. We're not going to use the hairdryer or anything like that. All we're going to do is go, lucky for me, it's a really nice sunny day outside. So I'm just going to leave these outside for a couple of hours and just let it naturally dry. So just let those cracks naturally form. So next up, we've got the white bases. So I'm going to put some colour onto these bases. So I'm going to go for some nice, real vibrant colours. So the colours I'm going to go with are going to be the French blue, and I'm also going to be using the green that I can never say. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put some inks added into this as well, into the mix. Now with these inks, it will make the colours a lot more vibrant and a lot more brighter underneath. And if you're going to go with a darker base, like a darker surface like mud, you want a nice vibrant colour underneath, so it will pop through. So now the bases are dry, I'm going to add the Games Workshop texture paint first of all, so straight over the top. Again, I added some areas where the areas were thicker in paint. Again, it's just same as the previous one. I want to get some nice chunky cracking effects popping up onto this base, so you can see those rich and vibrant colours bursting through underneath the crack effects. So next up, straight from the bottle, we're going in with the Vallejo Crackle paint. And again, just using the paintbrush, just spreading it around all over the actual base itself. Again, not going too thin, but not going too thick, just so we've got a nice even spread around, so we get those nice crackle effects popping up underneath. Okay, so to make this interesting, I wanted to experiment a little bit on this. So on the Fortress Redemption piece, I've done one half with the pre-rust effect, And then what with the rust effects, I'm just going to put the Crackle Medium straight on top of the rust effect. And then the other half, I'm just going to leave that plain. But what I'm going to do is once that medium effect is on, I'm then going to put the Crackle Medium on the rust effect, but not on the plain effect. Now, because this video is just about the Crackle Medium itself, I'm not going to take you through on how I painted this emblem up, but this will be a video that's going to be available for our cool, awesome patrons to the channel, and also it'll be one of the videos later on. It'll be, if you're a backer of the YouTube channel as well, will be accessible. Okay, so the Crackle Medium itself is dried on all the bases, and even the texture paint is starting to come through quite nicely. So as you can see on this one, unfortunately I did drop this on the floor, and you can see some of the medium, unfortunately, did break off, but it is what it is. We're just going to carry on. So with this one, I'm going in with the Rhine Oxide, and I'm just putting that straight through the airbrush, and I'm just going to go straight over the actual base itself. Now that texture paint's dried, you can see some really fantastic vibrant reds breaking through the actual crack parts of the actual base. And one of the properties that I love about this texture paint from Games Workshop, you can get some absolutely stunning bases very, very easily using this awesome texture paint. So big fan of it. Now this is of the brown. Maybe in the future I'd go with a darker brown, just so those reds would stand out more. Being this, it's more like a Martian red planet or Mars, so you can just about see the red coming through, but it's still quite nice. Now unfortunately the camera doesn't give this enough justice. In flesh you can actually see that red actually does stand out a lot more. Now this was the blues and the greens, and as you can see that it's kind of like you've got that demonic summoning warp charge that I can imagine underneath. So if you've got a sorcerer sat on this, or a demon that's conjuring a psychic spell or summoning demons, you've got that cool like power rising up underneath the actual base itself. I was really happy the way that came out. Freaking awesome. So this is the Crackle Medium from Vallejo. As you can see, it's kind of got a different texture, different type of feel, and the cracks are more, you can see the paint underneath coming through a lot more vibrant, which is absolutely really awesome. Now, if I would have chose my colours a little bit different, a little bit more wiser, you could get some really awesome super effects underneath the actual the Crackle Medium itself. Now, one of the cool properties on this I found when I was spraying the airbrush on top of this, the paint from the airbrush didn't go into the recesses. It only sat upon the top of the Crackle Medium, but where the cracks have appeared, the paint didn't sit inside. So when you're using this, it's really important to let the Crackle Medium dry first. Once the Crackle Medium's dried, then apply the paint on top, and you'll notice as from the base the paint will separate anyway to the places you want. But as you can see, the base itself, the cracking effect is absolutely really awesome. If I was smart, if I was going to do this again, I'd probably make the red a little bit more brighter, a lot more sharp, a lot more vibrant, put some oranges, some yellows in there, so it makes that real lavery fire effect and make it feel warm and hot coming through. But even still, even where I dropped it, and you can see the chipping that's come off, you got some really cool effects from it. Now, thinking about that, it's, if you was going to do a color where you wasn't going to do the pre-shading as much, you probably could get away with doing some chipping effects underneath, but it didn't quite work later on, and I'll explain why. Now, as you can see on the greens, on the darker base, the greens and the blues are really popping through, and it's really vibrant color coming through the actual base itself, and it does give you that demonic summoning. Now, if you compare it to the Games Workshop version, to the actual the Crackle Medium, so with the Games Workshop one, straight away it's matte, as with the Vallejo it's more gloss. With the Games Workshop one, you can actually manipulate it, and you can put more of the actual crackle effect in a certain spot, or the cracking effect, and you can make the cracks bigger. As with the Vallejo one, as soon as you put it down, because it's quite watery, it kind of evens out over the model itself. Saying that, I did try and mat that down, and unfortunately the gloss still came through. Now, just to give you some comparison, I did paint this both sides. So one side I sprayed up white with a gold trim. Probably wasn't the right gold to go with this, but it was more, I wasn't worried so much about the gold. It's more about showing you the chipping effect upon the actual white itself. And that's what I wanted to point out. As you can see, there's a couple of flaws in what happened on the painting, but one of those things happened. The paintbrush dropped on the model, on the actual model itself. Can't do nothing about that. But it's more just an experiment, so I'm not worried too much. As on the other side, it's all nicely painted up. As you can see, on one side we've got the medium that sat underneath all the different paints. So you've got the rust effect, then the medium, then I pre-shaded and then painted the model up as I would normally. As to the left hand side, you've got no medium on there whatsoever. That's the crucial part of this. Okay, so this part I went over thick on the white side itself. Now the white side didn't come out as way I hoped it would do, but I made a couple of schoolboy errors on this, and I was two minds whether to add this into the video or not. And then I thought, actually, do you know what? This is really important to add this in there. So sometimes you get a lot of videos where they sugarcoat stuff and they make things look really, really awesome, really, really cool. On this occasion, this didn't. However, don't jump the video just too soon, because when I do the other side, it does come out a lot better. Now, the biggest problem, the mistake I made with this is I put it down too thick and I used the hairdryer to start drying it. And it kind of changed the way the crackle effect happened. And that was my mistake, but I wanted to show you my mistake, so it's something to learn from, if that makes sense. So hopefully you can appreciate that on this, if that makes sense. Now, learning from my mistakes, I wanted to make sure that I got an even spread of the Crackle Medium and not using as much as I did previously. Now with this, I wanted to demonstrate the cracked effect that I had on the previous model that I'd done many, many years ago. So with this, I made sure that I put some at the top, a little bit thicker up top, and not so thick on the bottom. So top, hopefully to get some big cracks, and on the bottom, smaller cracks. But again, on that wing, I wanted to show you the cracked effect and show you what it looks like once the oils get into those cracks. So as you can see, this time I learned from my mistake and I let it dry naturally out in the sun. And as you can see, just before adding anything else into this, you've got some really, really cool cracking effects starting to appear on the dark green. And underneath, you can actually start seeing that textured effect already starting to take place, which was absolutely freaking awesome. So before doing anything, you've got some really, really cool effects. Now just above, I went a little bit thicker on the actual medium itself, and you can see you've got some really nice thicker cracks starting to appear through. And the way that started to lift off the paint, you've got some really, really cool effects. And I was really happy of the way that was, because it kind of gives you that feel of like over time weather effect, which was cool, and I like that. Now next up, I'm going to be coating this model in gloss. So I'm going to water down the gloss 50-50 to thinner to gloss, and I'm going to give it a couple of coats on there. Now with the previous paints, what I wanted to see whether or not I could get some of that Crackle Medium to come off. So before putting the gloss on, I wanted to see if I could break some of the Crackle Medium away from the model to see whether or not the rust effects would show up underneath. Now unfortunately, where I put like the pre-shades on, there was too much paint on there on the actual model itself, and it actually stopped the Crackle Medium coming away from the model itself. So one thing I learned from that, putting those extra layers onto the model, it meant that the Crackle Medium wasn't going to move. The only downside was I couldn't do any cool effects with that. But with those extra layers on, it also meant that the cracks themselves had less of a cavity, because all the different layers on top meant that those fine cracks were now unfortunately disappearing. So I created a oil wash using white spirit, and I added a little bit of oil into this. So in this scenario, I'm using black, and all I've done is mix a little bit of the oil into the white spirit just to make it like a milky consistency. And I just tried putting it in, so trying to feed it into the recesses and letting the oil flow into the actual cracks themselves, trying to make them go in naturally. So now, to keep the peace in this household, I had to make sure these models were left outside to let it dry naturally making sure they had plenty of air. Now, unfortunately, white spirit, Salvador, they friggin' stink. So my top tip, let it dry outside. Now, to clear the excess paint off the actual model itself, all I'm going to do is put a bit of white spirit into a bowl. Using a cotton bud, I dipped it into the white spirit and then just took a lot of the excess paint or the excess white spirit off the actual cotton bud so it's not dripping, and then just slightly went over the model itself. Now, it's really, really important that when you're doing this, don't push down too heavy. If you push down too heavy, you will take the paint out the excess, out the recesses, and that's what you don't want. And as you can see, this is the kind of mistake I've done on this part. I went in too heavy and it kind of then started taking the paint out the recesses, so it's something I'd have to go back in. But as you look on the model itself, you can see where there's some dark patches of the actual oil, and for some reason, I think where I used a hairdryer to dry the actual crackle paint, or wherever I've got air pockets in there, the oils are trapped underneath and it just made it look just rank and nasty. So I kind of went, yeah, do you know what, let's give up on that and then just stick to the other side. And as I said, I was in two minds whether to share that with you, but sometimes you have to learn from your mistake to go forward. So on this one, same process again, using a cotton bud, just taking off the excess paint, taking off the excess fluid off the actual cotton bud itself, and then just slightly gently going over the actual model itself, and then taking off the oil, so you can then actually start seeing that vibrant white and green starting to appear underneath. And as you can see, you've got some really awesome, stunning cracking effects starting to appear. Now, as you can see, the cracked effects in the actual eagle itself really stood out and done some really awesome effects on it, and I was very, very impressed in the way that came out. Just to finish it off, all I've done was add a bit of matte gloss over the top of it just to seal the oil paints in and just to pull those blends back in nicely. And it really did pop. I was really happy the way that came out. So hopefully you found some use out of this video, and there's some content in there that you can take away that's been useful and been helpful. Now that you've seen the disc from the Fortress of Redemption, you can kind of see the mistakes that I've made on it, and hopefully you can take away from that the mistakes that I've made, and you can kind of implement that so you don't make those same mistakes yourself. What I would recommend on the products is practice will make perfect. It's not something you can on the basis you can probably get away with that straight away, but I would recommend just get an old bit of card, an old spoon, some old milk bottles, or anything you've got. Just spray up, practice on it first. It's not it's not very expensive. I think it's only a couple of quid for a small bottle of this, and it will last you ages, depending on what you're doing on it. If you're going to paint 10,000 points worth of models, I don't think it's going to last that long, depending on how much you put on. If you've had a go on this and you've done some cool effects, or even if you've done some bad effects, we would really love to see, or I would love to see, what you've done. Please come and join us on Facebook. Hopefully there'll be some links down below in the description. Come join the Facebook group. Again, if you could follow us on Facebook on the page, that'd be awesome as well. In the group, if you can come along and share some cool, awesome work that you've done with this, we would really, really appreciate it. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Really do appreciate it. And if you haven't already, please give us the thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. That's it. Thank you very much, and hopefully I will catch you all again very, very soon. Thanks for watching.